Welcome to the Edge of Industry, our new podcast dedicated to unfolding how industrial connectivity brings value to your organization by accelerating digital transformation at scale, reducing cybersecurity risks, and unlocking operational efficiency. In today's episode, Ted Kirkham, Head of Product Strategy at Kepware, is joined by John Dyke, CEO of CESMII. Together, they'll explore the importance of data standards for future-proofing operations.
Welcome to the Edge of Industry podcast. I'm Ted Kirkham. I'll be your host for today. We're fortunate to have John Dyke, CEO of CESMII, to discuss data standards and how they're helping industrial companies advance Industry 4.0 initiatives. John, thanks for joining the Edge of Industry podcast.
Ted, it's a privilege to be here with you. Glad to have this conversation.
Great. Before we dive in, could you level set with us a little bit on your role and the role of CESMII?
I'd be happy to. So I have been with CESMII now for 6 years. We'll talk a little bit about who we are as the Smart Manufacturing Institute here in the U.S., but fundamentally, I've come from sort of the manufacturing software space. My entire career has been spent either at Rockwell Automation or at GE Fanuc, and a small software startup in the middle, building an enterprise manufacturing intelligence platform. And along that journey, figured out that highly complex space, that this sort of nexus between plant floor operations and how data gets used in the enterprise is, I believe, the most complex space in manufacturing. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about who CESMII is, but that's a little bit of who I am and the sort of history of my experience, and I think the thinking behind how important it is to focus on industrial data ops, data standardization, which is obviously this conversation today. So thanks, Ted.
We're so grateful that you're here. You mentioned CESMII and the focus on U.S. manufacturing, but the scope of what you're trying to accomplish is really global in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, it really is. We're funded by the Department of Energy. We've been given a little over $200 million so far to accomplish our vision to accelerate the adoption of smart manufacturing, drive energy productivity, drive manufacturing productivity, and specifically to cut the cost and time to deploy smart manufacturing by 50%. And because we're funded by U.S. taxpayer funds, obviously those funds are deployed here in the U.S. But as you and I both know, manufacturing is a global enterprise. And so the work that we do here around standardization isn't distinctly or uniquely a U.S. effort. There are efforts like ours in Germany, in Spain, and Italy, Japan, and Korea, other parts of the world. And we have to ensure that the best of these efforts around the world are focused on harmonization. And so we're very specific and intentional in working with the other major manufacturing regions around the world to ensure alignment. And specifically, we collectively use the word harmonization of these fundamentally interoperability standards. Data standardization isn't the end, it's the means whereby we reach interoperability, which is what we all have agreed on as one of the major tenets of or one of the major requirements for how we see the accelerated adoption of these capabilities in the marketplace.
Right. And I would imagine as we think about standardization and interoperability, we're talking about not only within U.S. manufacturers and global manufacturers, but also across supply chains. And that really does become a global conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If we're going to work with, for example, great manufacturer in the U.S., whether it's Procter & Gamble or Toyota or ExxonMobil, across any industry, these organizations have manufacturing operations in most major regions on the planet. And so we can't, as you and I are both sort of saying by implication, we can't be doing anything uniquely specific to the U.S. if it's only the right thing or if it's only adopted here in the U.S. And so, yeah, these are very much intentional global efforts, and thankfully it's been encouraging from my perspective as we both understand what these other regions and what these other organizations around the world are doing, and as they hear from us what we're doing, there is a major sort of acceptance of the focus and then already predisposition, I'll say, to the work that we're doing here, because it is based on standards like OPC-UA, like the specific parts of the OPC specification, not the protocol piece, but the modeling languages that I'm sure we'll talk more about, but that are central to these efforts to drive information model standardization for manufacturing.
So, John, we talked a lot about organizations trying to move to more sophisticated manufacturing processes based on data at the edge. How does CESMII see some of the big challenges for manufacturers as they try to transform their operations?
Yeah, so today, with the complete lack of standardization in the OT data space, every vendor is compelled to kind of create and propagate proprietary means for data to flow from the sensor, from the PLC, from the automation controller, from the historian, from the robot, from the machine tools. That there are no standards for how to apply or impose structure on data coming from those sources. And so there is a huge opportunity to sort of commoditize, simplify, and reduce costs and complexity for how that data is made available to the many, many different consumers of that data. And if we can move towards the commoditization of that infrastructure, which is really fundamentally of no value add, right? The shaping of data as it comes from those data sources to the place where an application can consume it and do something of value, it is fundamentally a necessary evil, but there's so much value in doing so. And I think that's why we're excited to, as I mentioned before, to work with Kepware to sort of drive some of that standardization as close to the edge as possible and enabling the imposition of these standardized data structures to those what today are completely proprietary and disparate data flows into the application environment.
Right. So as you think about who's doing it well, or some examples of where standards are being adopted by manufacturing, where do you see it today, or where does CESMII play a role in helping to advance it best?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate to work with a couple of industries where there's kind of a center of gravity. Like as Ted, we've been working with U.S. Car, which is a pretty competitive automotive consortia made up of Ford, GM, and Stellantis. I'm sanctioned to work on strategies and capabilities that will be of benefit to the entire industry, and importantly, as I said already, in a pretty competitive way. And so U.S. Car specifically came to the marketplace looking for a partner to help them drive or create a smart manufacturing roadmap for the automotive industry. And we have had the privilege of working with them for over a year and a half now to bring these ideas, this focus on data standards, interoperability, so on and so forth, to the automotive industry. Some of the more mature manufacturers in every industry, from Procter & Gamble to Owens Corning to Toyota, Anderson Windows, Nestle, Purina, Koch Industries, are each working with us here on this vital capability. And this is, again, not something any one stakeholder, any one company, any one stakeholder group can actually accomplish on their own. So these organizations are aware of and specifically working with us to bring their partners, their community, their ecosystem into this conversation, into this sort of education and implementation journey, so that we can move forward together more collaboratively. Standards have to start somewhere. Standardization has to start somewhere. We don't have a great history or great record of standards adoption here in the U.S., as you know, but the focus on standardization and adoption, because it's the right thing to do and because it's economically compelling, that's the focus that we're driving for, which right now puts us in the category of de facto standard, but it seems to be seems to be a welcome set of initiatives for these manufacturing companies. And this is a short list. There's many others, other stakeholder groups like the vendors, the machine builders, systems integrators that are all part of this journey. But yeah, it's important to see that there is adoption. There is kind of a tip of the spear to begin that flywheel turning and help us cross that chasm.
So, John, tell me a little bit more about who's actually engaging with CESMII to help build some of the standards across the industries that they serve. Who do you tend to see?
Yeah, so we get to work with, in some cases, industry groups, like in the automotive industry. There's what I would call a center of gravity for the auto industry called U.S. Car. It's a pre-competitive consortia that consists of Ford, GM, Stellantis, and they've been working with us to build an automotive smart manufacturing roadmap, which is now being adopted by many other manufacturing OEMs and tier 1, 2 suppliers, as well as machine builders. We're working with Fanuc Robotics and many of the other kind of major robotic and machine tool builders as well. But it's not just the automotive industry. We have the privilege of working with many other great manufacturing companies across many industries, like P&G, obviously Procter & Gamble, Owens Corning, Toyota, Anderson Windows, Nestle, Purina, Coke Industries, and then there's the vendor community, right? The Cognite, the ThinkIQs, Symphony AI, Rockwell Automation, PTC, Siemens, and others, and then I put Kepware in a fairly unique category as an infrastructure enabler for this really important work, as not just a provider of connectivity solutions, but a strategic part of how we can achieve this objective of driving and imposing standardized structure on this data as it moves forward. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's great. The most common call we get at Kepware is from organizations who are trying to transform their manufacturing environments, and then they find how complex the connectivity challenge is, right? And there's a variety of different types of assets present, even within a single manufacturing facility. And then when you think of somebody like a Ford or a Stellantis with a global footprint that's grown through both building their own and acquiring, the types and number and amazing difference of what they've got on the shop floor is really remarkable. And of course, it's a great place where Kepware can help to make connections that move that data from the floor up to the consuming systems.
Manufacturing has been just sort of a massive hotbed of innovation for decades. To your point, we've created extraordinary technical debt, and it's been exacerbated by the lack of standards and standardization. I think within these enterprises, these great enterprises, there has been significant effort to drive standardization, but those standardization efforts are within that corporation, within that enterprise. And so literally every enterprise is investing in unique standardization efforts, and there's been almost no opportunity to cross-pollinate or to collaborate around that standardization effort. And that's what this work that we're embarking on here is enabling, that sort of ability to drive standardization in ways that don't inhibit the opportunity to innovate or differentiate yourself from one vendor to the next or from one enterprise to the next, but also do so with real care to intellectual property and making sure that we don't cross the boundaries between what's allowable from an IP and regulatory standpoint as well.
Right. Well, let's get down to the dollars and cents a little bit. When we think about manufacturers that are starting to use their OT data and are driving standards into their organizations, what are some of the returns that they tend to see through using data standards to better understand their manufacturing environments?
Yeah, so as I just spoke to, perhaps a little prematurely, standards have not fared well in this space. For some reason, I think we could probably spend a bit of time pontificating a little bit at some point, but Europe and Asia have done a much better job and seem to place a much higher value on the idea of standardization. And they are sort of benefiting from that at this point, that the technical debt, the level of technical debt that they are living with, and that is sort of really constraining our adoption in many ways of smart manufacturing here in the U.S. isn't quite as heavy or as much of a burden for Europe and Asia because of their adoption of standards in the past decades. That said, the value of standardization is unquestionably the only means whereby you can afford to truly scale and sustain these capabilities. If you look at the largest enterprises in any vertical, as I briefly mentioned before, they have created their own standardization efforts. That we can do if we can bring that idea into the general marketplace and create both the justification and the tools and the trusted environment where these standardization efforts can take place at an industry-wide pace. That is the urgent need. One of the things that you and I have talked about in previous conversations is the fact that manufacturing productivity in the U.S., after 35, 40 years of steady linear growth, manufacturing productivity by worker here in the U.S., for the last decade, we plateaued and then see a decline of that manufacturing productivity. And so we here at CESMII, and I know you share this view, there have an urgent need to help U.S. manufacturers drive productivity, grow in our ability to become more productive. And this is one of the major efforts that we see as an enabler, as a catalyst to kind of create that productivity growth curves once again. And so while infrastructure on the surface, and what we're talking about here is fundamentally about infrastructure, while fundamentally that's not appealing and nobody wants to invest in infrastructure, I think it's that lack of focus on infrastructure in this space that has created this technical debt. And so we believe fundamentally that it's this commoditization and harmonization of all these disparate, non-standardized ways of moving data through the OT world into the enterprise and supply chain side is one of the most significant things we can do to see that productivity turn pilot again.
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable problem when you talk about the plateauing of productivity, in the U.S. and trying to help manufacturers overcome that. And while standardization offers just tremendous benefits, I know it's had some headwinds a little bit, like we were talking about earlier, especially maybe in the U.S. But if you think about it from sort of an individual manufacturer's perspective, what are some of the obstacles or challenges that they're likely to run into as they sort of start this journey toward greater standardization of their OT data?
Yeah, so let me start my response by saying that as manufacturers, there are these headwinds that you allude to are absolutely there. What we've been talking about so far is largely the Fortune 1000, maybe the Fortune 2000 thing. The headwinds for the small medium manufacturing community in this country are almost insurmountable. There's a growing digital divide that the current level of cost and complexity of these capabilities represents, that has prevented almost all small medium manufacturers from participating in this value creation, the promise of value in this smart manufacturing fourth industrial revolution journey. And so that's a really important part of the conversation that we need to recognize and ensure that through this effort to democratize smart manufacturing, and this is maybe the umbrella idea around everything we've talked about is sort of democratization, drive accessibility by reducing cost and complexity. The focus, we believe, is on taking the right ideas, the right strategies that are of interest to the Fortune 2000, use the implementation of those ideas to drive down cost and complexity, which will bring the rest of the manufacturing community forward, because the inherent sort of side benefit of that will be to reduce cost and complexity and make every manufacturer more competitive along the way. But to answer your question specifically, OT today is characterized by the demands of the operation. Right now, this shift, this hour, with this product that I need to ship today, they don't have time for the funding or to think about standardization or think about sustaining these efforts over the course of the next year, 5 years, 10 years. It's Fred or Susan down in the shop that are solving problems right now, doing so in the most economic way possible. What that means is they're highly innovative, highly motivated people, but again, propagating that complexity, propagating that cost and that lack of sustaining on the shop floor. And so those are the opportunities we have to address. We have to be able to, through the work that we're doing, we have to provide ways to help the plants and help Fred and Susan down in the shop innovate, but do so in a standardized and structured and sanctioned and scalable way and a secure, right? Because today, every one of those innovations that's being deployed on the plant, every use case, one use case at a time, represents a massive cybersecurity threat, because typically folks on the plant floor are again doing these things as shadow IT, not as a part of an overall IT sustained and standardized IT structure and methodology and oversight. So there are many sort of lenses through which you look at this innovation on the shop floor and you say, these obstacles have to be understood. The power of these bright, innovative people on the shop floor that can solve these problems, we have to capitalize on that. We have to give them the right tools, but we also have to give them a better framework whereby they can innovate in the plant with some level of work rate, oversight, sustainability, cybersecurity sort of framework, all of those pieces. And that's the sort of magic that we believe will finally facilitate the OT-IT convergence that Ted, you and I have been talking about in this space for 20 years, but have seen very little sustained sort of movement in this direction. There are some genuine challenges or headwinds that have prevented OT and IT from sort of mutually moving forward in this space. And I think that is also a major benefit of the kind of work that we're talking about here around standardization.
Yeah, and I think to hear you describe it, one of the things that comes to mind is this idea of creating OT superheroes, right? So it's less about using standards to prevent, behavior you don't want, although that is a great side benefit from a manufacturer's perspective. It's more about empowering the people at the edge on the shop floor to get the right information at the right time for the right purposes. And to be able to do that repeatably in a scalable way.
That's exactly right. And a secure way. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So thinking a little bit about Kepware and what we're trying to accomplish in terms of helping manufacturers standardize their industrial connectivity for the enterprise and enable some of these OT data standards, how do you see CESMII and Kepware kind of working together to advance digital transformation for manufacturing?
Well, the very cool thing about the journey that we're on with you specifically there at Kepware, and the privilege we have of collaborating to solve some of these major challenges for manufacturing, is that they're driven by manufacturing. We have a number of great mutual manufacturing customers of yours, members of ours here as a consortium here at CESMII that are working collaboratively to help us figure out how to sort of bridge this aspiration of a future where machines can be discovered and information models can be discovered through this thing that we talk about as a smart manufacturing profile. And as I mentioned before, this is the part 5 of the OPC UA specification that gives us a great modeling language, and how we can then take those standards-based models, information models, and bring them to the edge, to the systems that are like Kepware that are connecting to all those real-time data sources, and able to impose that structure on the data as close to the edge as possible, move that to the core wherever that data is being ingested and contextualized, and then also use that same information model to create a standards-based open API, which would in our opinion be a graph-based API to move that data in an interoperable way to the manufacturing application. So number one, as I stated here, customer driven. We need the manufacturers to be defining what it is that and driving what it is that we need to solve together. And then number two, working together as we've started to define what that looks like within the infrastructure and within the strategies that those manufacturing companies can use today. And this is, I believe, how we're going to ensure that the innovation that we're doing and the democratization of these capabilities is going to work. And by the way, I think doing it with a great organization like you there at Kepware is going to sort of provide the kind of inspiration and the capabilities that will allow us to do this in a much more accessible way for the small, medium manufacturers. We've seen this sort of urgent need for the small, medium manufacturers throughout this conversation, but throughout the time that we've been working here at CESMII, and fundamentally, as these large Fortune 1000 manufacturers are trying to work with us to solve these problems, they've figured out, especially through COVID, that their supply chain is fundamentally made up of small, medium manufacturers, and if they're going to see the productivity growth gains that they're looking for at these large manufacturing enterprises, they need a supply chain that's equally competitive. And so it's become clear that it's not an option to see these capabilities sort of move into the domain of a small, medium manufacturer as well. So anyway, I think I'm drifting a little bit from your question, but I think the work that we're embarking on together with Kepware at CESMII is fundamentally about simplifying and using standardized information models, what we call smart manufacturing profiles, to impose that structure and to ensure that we can achieve that objective of interoperability at the application layer and everywhere in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I really like about what you said is, that idea of centering how we form solutions for the market around our customers. And I think that's a value that CESMII and Kepware share, right? Which is staying really close to the needs of our customers and the needs of our industries, and putting those above the shiny objects that sometimes get discovered along the way. So while you were talking about supply chains, I was remembering Brembo, who is, of course, the CESMII member and part of the U.S. car group, and also has been a longtime PTC and Kepware customer. And I was remembering a story they told me about how they implemented standardized tags for some of their manufacturing facilities, and immediately discovered that they had machines running when they weren't producing anything. And by simply turning the machines off when they weren't needed, they captured a huge sustainability and efficiency win. And it all came from being able to look across a variety of different manufacturing facilities and apply a standardized model to how they saw those assets and make decisions from that data. It's just a great story. And of course, when we think about Brembo as part of the supply chain for major automotive, efficiencies that they see, become efficiencies for their partners as well.
Yeah, I love that story, Ted, because it underscores how this notion of standardization at the infrastructure level drives and empowers massive innovation and productivity at the application layer. So if they hadn't taken the time, and most manufacturers have not, so that puts Brembo in a sort of that tip of the spear sort of category. Most great manufacturers are doing this, but many are not. But if you take the time, and this is why we're here, if we can take that idea and the effort to standardize even within that enterprise and sort of peanut butter across all manufacturers, think of the power the multiplication effect that has on this notion that we can commoditize that, simplify that. We have, so for example, with our work that we've done here in the US and with our counterparts around the world, specifically in Europe, we have hundreds of these standardized information models and the types that those information models are made of through an inheritance structure. The idea that there is a sort of type for what cycle time looks like, the idea that there is a standardized type for what machine state looks like, producing, block, start, alarm, faulted, all of those things. These are basic building blocks that if you could take those simple things and standardize on them, now any application in the world developed by anyone can discover that type, that object instance, and do something of value with it at scale across thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of assets. And so that what you described is a perfect microcosm of the vision that we have here at CESMII to standardize at scale as an industry here in the US and around the world, and see the OT world do for the first time the things that IT has been doing for 2 decades, which is partnering, collaborating across enterprise boundaries, across regional boundaries for open source, crowdsourcing, for plug and play, for interoperability, solving big problems at that layer that individually no one can solve. And so congratulations to you and to Brembo for that work, and looking forward to doing that across many, many enterprises in the days to come.
Well, thank you. CESMII's been a great partner for Kepware in that work and in other manufacturing environments. And it's so powerful to talk to these customers about how they're transforming their organizations using data. I'm curious, as you think about kind of data standards and architectures in the future, how do you see manufacturing evolving? What is the industry going to look like in 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah, so I'm not the prophet or the son of a prophet, but I think this, and I said this sort of in my introduction, the idea of data management, industrial data management being central to our success in the future, is at the heart of what we're talking about here. We saw the decline of manufacturing productivity. Well, the U.S. genuinely is seeing manufacturing reshoring and friendshoring, nearshoring, and we're doing so at a time when that productivity growth or lack of productivity growth is an absolutely significant red flag. If we can accomplish the vision of what we've laid out here, Ted, we will see that manufacturing productivity trajectory change in a positive direction. One of the fundamental reasons, among others, and this is a very nuanced thing, is that one of the fundamental reasons we saw the manufacturing productivity plateau and then decline was, I believe, the sort of end of the era of usefulness of the Industry 3.0 tools and methods and cultures. We need the fourth industrial revolution, this focus on data, the value of data that's there in our operations. We need to free that data up to drive this productivity curve. And the way we're going to do that is through these stratagems here. And so from my perspective, what is manufacturing to look like in the days to come? It's going to be a manufacturing enterprise, small, medium, or large, characterized by a data-driven culture, characterized by interoperability at the core, characterized by the same set of sort of characteristics that have defined the IT world over the last 2 and 3 decades. If we look at the transformation of the enterprise IT organization from 3 decades ago to where they are today, the things that drove that journey of value creation for the enterprise IT side of the organization is exactly what we're talking about here. And so the OT world is more complex, as we've agreed on already, but the complexity, the cost to drive value from the existing operations, from the data in those operations today, I believe is what we're going to see drive the kind of productivity curve that we need and that we will be demanding as we think about a secure middle class in the U.S., as we think about the workforce of the future that we need, the demand to take the workforce that we have today, engage them in a more innovative and a more hands-on way in the value creation of our operations. This is all made possible by the kind of focus on data and interoperability and data standardization that we've discussed here, Ted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's so exciting from the Kepler perspective is to see organizations looking for that data from the edge in a more structured way. And whether that's using cross-functional IT, OT teams that are, floating among the different manufacturing environments, or whether it's driven from a top down, or there's a precipitating event that bubbles it from the bottom up. The movement toward more standardized ways of connecting industrial assets to moving that data to consuming systems and then making greater business decisions based on that data when it's analyzed at the ERP level is it's just a really exciting time across the industry.
If I can just add to that briefly, Ted, the notion that AI is going to transform manufacturing operations, the notion that digital twins at scale will help us bridge the gap between the sort of design as designed and as operated sort of part of the manufacturing operation. These all demand these capabilities, right? We're not going to see, I'll be bold and make a somewhat provocative statement here. We're not going to see AI at scale in manufacturing operations if we can't train these models against data that is surfaced with this kind of structure already pre-imposed, right? So virtually every major source of value creation through AI, digital twins, through this new but vital aspect of having manufacturers and their suppliers exchange data in real time about how that product is being produced by your supplier and how that product is moving from the supplier to the manufacturer in real time. All of these major sort of next-gen sources of value creation will be dependent upon and accelerated by these efforts right here. And so we have to get this right. This is the opportunity. This is the challenge in front of us. And this is why most great manufacturing companies understand that this is where we need to focus on right now. The things that we've been struggling with in the past, the challenges we've faced, this whole idea of pilot purgatory, this is what we're poking after.
Yeah. So where do companies get started? So if they believe in standards, they believe in the power of the data, they understand that it can lead to better productivity, better efficiency, better returns for the business, where would you recommend a company get started if they didn't know what to do next?
So I would say, and hopefully this doesn't sound too self-serving, but spend some time on the CESMII website, CESMII.org, CESMII.org. Educate yourself on these ideas, the reality that we've been propagating data silos and stovepipe architectures for all these years, and that's what has to end. And so the best advice I would say for the manufacturer is, and this will sort of have the trickle down effect for your machine builders, your vendors, your systems integrators and consultants, your workforce. The most important thing I would say to manufacturers is insist on these standardized sort of interoperability centric solutions going forward. Don't settle for another use case, another technology provider, another project that's going to create yet another data silo and yet another stovepipe architecture. If that's what your partner is proposing, put a pause on the project and say, hey, this is no longer sufficient. We need to begin propagating our architecture of the future that says we won't accept another data solve. We're not going to propagate these Industry 3.0 ideas. We're going to invest in a future-proof architecture that's going to help me, not just with this use case, but with every use case to come over the coming years.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think where we tend to start from the Kepware perspective to feed that model is this idea of kind of getting your digital house in order, right? Thinking about what are your objectives, and oftentimes for our customers that means finding a standard connectivity tool that's going to work with not only my new manufacturing assets but things that may have been on my floor for a good long period of time now, and interoperate with the types of systems that I'm going to be using for making my data decisions. So we talk a lot about taking the first step of creating standards from the edge up with a tool like a Kepware that will enable you to grow what you're doing with your industrial data.
Yeah, we talk about a smart manufacturing mindset, and I think what you just said encapsulates the beginning of that mindset. That the day when the cost of putting a piece of equipment on the network was sort of a decision for the plant manager, someone to say, "No, that's an extra $10,000. I don't know that we can afford that." That day is long gone. The idea that data from that piece of equipment will create value for the organization has to be at the core of everything we do. I talk about the sort of historic mindset on the plant floor being the duct tape and baling twine mindset. But a smart manufacturing mindset says that much like safety has become kind of a part of our mindset in operations, continuous improvement, even quality over the last 3 or 4 decades, this notion that data is the enabler of our operations, productivity, and future competitiveness is at the heart of our mindset. And it's not just something that we build into this project, it's something that we think about as a strategic enabler going forward. And so what you've just summarized, I think, is a great way to say smart manufacturing is the next mindset that we have to build into our DNA going forward. It's about the data. It's about creating a more competitive future for our organization.
Well, John, that's a great one to go out on. I am so grateful to you for being here and sharing your insights and your expertise. This has been a lot of fun. Always great to catch up. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ted. I genuinely appreciate, as I said, I appreciate our partnership. I appreciate this dialogue. I appreciate the sort of visionary tact that you are taking there to bring the best of smart manufacturing to your marketplace, to your customers. And it's an honor to partner with you in this way.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to our audience. On behalf of PTC Kepware, thank you all for listening. I'm Ted Kirkham for the Edge of Industry. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Edge of Industry podcast, brought to you by PTC Kepware. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you listen. And please leave a rating or a review. Be sure to check out other episodes to hear new perspectives at ptc.com/edgeofindustry.